Hello and welcome to the Resilient Fitness Revolution. I'm your host, Dibs, a personal trainer, educator, and consultant who works in the space between healthcare and fitness. A big part of my work focuses on something I call the rehab gap. It's that confusing space where people finish physiotherapy or medical care but still don't feel ready to return to exercise, sport, or everyday life. There's often very little guidance on how to safely build strength, confidence, and trust in your body after a big procedure or life-changing injury. Through my coaching and consulting work, I help bridge that gap, supporting individuals, coaches, and communities to create safer pathways back to movement. This podcast explores what resilience and strength actually look like in the real world, especially for people navigating injury, surgery, chronic illness, disability, identity, and the complicated relationship many of us have with our bodies. Each episode, I sit down with athletes, coaches, healthcare professionals, and everyday humans who are finding their own ways forward. If you've ever felt like traditional fitness spaces weren't built with you in mind, you're in the right place. So today's guest is Michelle Smook, a Northern Manitoba transplant who is queer, fat, and neurospicy yoga teacher, parent, and wellness coach based in Montreal, Canada, serving like-minded groups. Michelle's journey into this work came through deeply personal experiences. After surviving a domestic violence attack while raising two young children, she began a powerful healing process, initially to break cycles for her kids, but eventually to reclaim her own quality of life and sense of worth. Before stepping into wellness work, Michelle was the manager of health and safety for a municipality. It was a high-pressure role dealing with risk, compliance, and the aftermath of workplace incidents. After experiencing the emotional toll of that work, including a devastating fatality involving a child, Michelle made the life-changing decision to leave that career and redirect her energy towards supporting people directly. Today, she works with people navigating complex intersections of identity and health. Her approach focuses on creating spaces where people can heal parts of themselves that may be holding them back from living the lives that they want. Michelle believes that coaches and teachers don't fix people, they simply provide tools and support while individuals do the courageous work themselves. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
What I failed to
Exciting.
mention is that you're also a client of mine,
Yes.
which is a theme. So far, I'm hoping to break away from that theme, but my clients are just so interesting and cool. So I appreciate you coming and chatting with me today. And for people just learning about you, can you tell them or describe to them the type of work that you do in the fitness and wellness space?
Currently, I'm teaching yoga here in Montreal. And um, prior to that, I was doing some coaching on the side. I do have two kids that are teenage age at present. They're both, one of them's away at school and the other one is living with me. So I've taken a light approach to work at present.
Good when you have two teenagers. What drew you specifically towards yoga and wellness coaching as what you want to do, or even for right now?
So, right now, the group of people that I teach are more around my age. So, I'm in my 40s. I, about 5 years ago, started to experience the perimenopausal effect. I had a pretty big surgery during the pandemic that sort of sent me into an earlier perimenopause. So, um, the group of people that I work with tend to be sort of in that category, and they tend to also be the types of people that are attracted to my style of teaching and the classes that I offer. So um, I find it like really fun and interesting work working with older women, just because I feel like I'm on my way there, and um, there's a different perspective that they have to offer than maybe in your common wellness spaces. And it seems to me that as I've aged, there's less and less um, of this group in the spaces that maybe I used to attend. So it's nice to see and be able to offer that kind of space because I think that when you hit a certain age as a woman, it's often isolating in a lot of ways. Your value kind of plummets in the world, And, taking care of yourself during this time period is actually quite crucial for longevity, um, and comfort later on in life. And I think if you're excluded from those spaces, or there's just not really anything offered that applies, um, then you're not getting what you need. There's no resources available. So I'm happy to offer that.
You just said that it's hard to find those spaces and you're creating one of those spaces. Are you, according to your knowledge, sort of the only person that's creating a space like that in the city or in your area? Or how much do you know about other instructors that are sort of serving the same demographic?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of, white cis sort of spaces that exist for women of my age. But I think once you start branching off into like more of the intersections, there's less and less available. And it's hard enough when when you intersect somewhere with multiple identities to get access to something that fits. In my experience here in my city, is there's a lot of stuff available. Like there's a lot of middle-aged sort of, white women specifically teaching yoga. It exists, and older too, women well into like their 60s, still teaching the practice. But I think what's interesting about yoga is, as a wellness modality, let's say, it's not just a physical practice. So it encompasses many different things, but its main focus is a spiritual practice, and a very small portion of it is fitness or physical in some way. So um, I feel like maybe that's why some of those older teachers exist in my space and are a bit more readily available. But again, like at the intersections, very few and far between in the West, anyway, like where we're located.
Just going back to your origin story and your own journey of healing, you were talking a little bit about doing it for your kids and wanting to stop the cycle. So, what sort of things in your day to day life or in your behavior have you been doing to help your children not have the same sort of trauma growing up?
Right. So I think like a lot of people who experience any type of trauma in their life that's brought upon them by another human, so some type of abuse or violence, it really plays on their self-worth. It really takes that down to either zero or pretty close. So I think a lot of women in particular, because I'm a woman, I'll just speak from this perspective. I think that what happens is as your value decreases in those abusive relationships, if you have children, they sort of become like your purpose, your reason for being, because your value is shot after living with someone who's on the daily attacking your worth in the world. So I think a lot of women, when they exit abusive relationships, like of this nature, will have, uh, their children, their purpose, is sort of what gets things off the ground. Because if you're not focusing on your own value because you don't think you have any, which is really sad to reflect on, um, you need to find something. And children are an easy focus when you're in a situation like that. So, and a lot of people who end up in those situations too, so even their worth has been diminished so much that nothing can help. And I was at least lucky enough to have some glimmers of hope, and I pursued that. So, what was happening to me at the time was I had, both girls. My youngest daughter was about a year and a half old, and my eldest was almost 4. and they needed a lot of attention and care. Just simply like when your parents get divorced, that's a big deal. And they divorce because there's crazy things going on inside the house. So, both of them needing a lot of support and just presence. And I could see that my career was not built to do that. And I know a lot of moms in my situation would, they focus on their careers more because they need to drive up their household income because now they've found themselves, completely dependent on their own income to provide for their children. Because usually when you have a rupture in a relationship with somebody like my ex, you can't rely upon income from them because, it's another sort of tactic to control and abuse from a distance. So there's, like not everyone is fortunate enough to have the opportunity to quit whatever is bringing in the income. So I started with I just started going for daily walks. And through the process of going through daily walks, I was walking with a friend who was a diabetes educator at the time. She was a nurse, and she didn't have any children. We just had our dogs, and we would just go for a walk every single evening together. And then at one point, we realized that we were walking like 10 kilometers, and we were both feeling really, really good. Through that process, I was separating from my kids and from everything else in my life, and I was having a me moment every single day that was just dedicated to taking care of myself, which had been a lot of years since I was able to do that. And you kind of through that process, you have time to think, you get clarity, you experience the act of self-care. And, you kind of maybe if you, in the past you did do self-care, you start to remember what it felt like, and the lights kind of start to turn on a bit in terms of taking care of yourself. And I think a lot of people, when they enter into any kind of wellness space, if they've been absent from it, I'm sure you have clients who, work out regularly and have been taking care of themselves most of their lives. And then you have clients that are just stepping into it for the very first time. And those are two very different types of people.
Yes.
um, yeah, and in terms of motivation and like just their starting point around physical capabilities and all kinds of mentality, all kinds of stuff. Or people will get scared into taking care of themselves. So, in my case, I was scared. I thought if I don't make changes, like who will care for my children? The alternative is a very bad one. Like I need to be here for them. So yeah, I started with just walking, and then I had a friend that was, because I was still living in my small home community. I had a friend that was a yoga teacher, and she owned the only yoga studio in the community. And I took like a couple of classes with her, just one-on-one, just to kind of feel out what it would be like if I wanted to even, join her studio and whatever. And she had a few other teachers working for her at the time too. So in a town of 14,000 people, and you have a business that's based on fitness that has a few employees, is kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I started attending some classes there on Saturdays and fell in love with yoga because it was connecting me to my body. And so it's the only physical practice that I've ever done that put me back in my body so quickly. And I think people who have experienced trauma or just a lot of distress in their life, neurodivergent people too, like we tend to dissociate from our bodies because there's a lot of stimuli going on in there. And sometimes you need to just exit. So yeah, it was the first, and where I was put back in my body, but also given tools to feel comfortable while I was there. So, and I take that practice into all physical practices that I do in my life, working out with you, or I hike in the summer months. When I was a kid, I played racket sports, and like being present and knowing how your body works and feeling how your body works can be a really nice meditation and a way to disconnect from the craziness of what's going on in everyday life.
A lot of
So,
neurodivergent people also feel like they can't be in their body, and it's very difficult. A lot of my clients find it very, very difficult, even through sessions with me and in other classes, to get in their body. Do you think for you made a difference that the instructor that you had at the time when you started doing yoga or training with me, or is it something that the instructor can help you with, or you find it easy now that sort of movement is your thing, it's your freedom, it's your meditation?
well, I think, I mean, I'm not certain, but I've done a little bit of thinking about this. When I was really young, I was in dance. And when you're in dance, you're really learning about all the parts of your body. So you're learning about the muscles in your feet and in your calves and your legs, and you're learning about your glutes and holding your abdomen. And like it's a very anatomy based dance. And, I didn't love it. Hated, I hated being in dance. That's why it didn't last. But what I can give it credit for, I guess, later on in life is it did give me a knowing of my body and where I was in time and space. Um, so I do like later on in life, what I would draw upon when I would, take a yoga class, and let's say you didn't get a great teacher, because, just like in anything, right? Sometimes people are just like maybe a new teacher, a teacher you don't click with or whatever, but just somebody who couldn't really describe how to engage the muscles or like what part of the body you're supposed to be feeling into in order to do the practice. I could draw upon what I learned when I was a child. So I feel like maybe the two things combined gave me an opportunity. But what I see now as a teacher, because I have one student who her sense of where she is inside of her body, like her proprioception, is not that great. She's an older woman as well, and she really struggles to understand where she is inside of her body. What I find with her is like the repetition of doing the same posture over and over again, that sort of muscle memory approach to teaching is really highly effective for her. But you have to be paying attention to your clients and what they need and what they're like. And I think that's a skill that's not developed easily. It's a skill that a lot of people, I think, don't develop at all. So I would say those kinds of teachers are the ones that have helped put me back in my body. And you have to be able to see it as well. I have some feelings about the difference between group fitness and one-on-one fitness as well, and especially for people like the client that I just mentioned. There's the cost component to things too, always to consider for folks who are drawing upon your resources. But I really like when people take even just like a couple of one-on-one opportunities so that they can really get like the full impact of your ability to teach them how to be in their bodies. I also think you need to teach them how to get out of their body too, when it's too much. So that's a separate subject.
Yeah, no, I 100% have the same experience with my clients who used to be dancers, even the ones that are now in their 60s and 70s that did a little bit of dancing when they were in school or whatever. They are the ones who understand my instructions immediately. It's crazy how that works after such a long time. So 10 out of 10 parents, if your kid's not into sport, maybe suggest dancing because that really, really helps with their bodies. And yeah, I think you do have a good understanding of what to say from your dance lessons, I guess, because even when I train you and one or two of your children, if what I'm saying isn't coming through, then you know how to rephrase it. So it might go through, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, you have a skill there. And so I guess in your older life before you started the walking and the yoga and things like that, what do you wish that someone had told you back then before you discovered that movement felt really good for you as a self-care practice? Do you think there could have been something that someone said for you to get into this industry or even hobby for yourself a little bit earlier?
don't know if somebody could have said anything. I feel like it's what they could have done. So, I played table tennis for years, and I ended up quitting because I hit puberty. And, hindsight's always a great thing. I'm probably neurodivergent, and I started to like overheat in my body. I was just overstimulated all the time. I hated sweating. I felt uncomfortable all the time. And what I wish had happened, and I mean, I think we know a lot more about this now in order to make physical activity more appealing, was just, like somebody could have put a fan in the room, or like some very simple things to just make it more comfortable, would have been really helpful as a really young person. And then, I mean, as I skied as well. So I did like downhill freestyle skiing when I was a teenager. That's what I switched to after I quit table tennis. And that went way better because it was cold. It was a cold sport. So even if I was sweating under my gear, I lived in northern Canada. It was -40 when you went skiing, and you just dealt with it. You were more freezing than you were overheating. And I could stick with that. I stuck with it right through high school. But that was my own finding, I guess. I had a friend that was doing it, and I, kind of teamed up with her, and we just continued to do it throughout high school. But I do wish that fitness, or just anything related to health and wellness, hadn't been, sold to me by the adults that I was surrounded by as this thing that I had to do, because if I didn't, I was going to get diabetes or have a heart attack, or there was all this like fear placed into like, you work out for physical sickness prevention, not to enjoy yourself, also to be thin, and all of that stuff too tied into it. And instead of it just being like this really fun thing that you could do because it makes you feel good, there were so many things tied into it that just made it really unattractive for so many reasons. And I have very neurospicy children, and one of them is exactly like me. She's overheating. You train her regularly. I feel like with her, my approach, because I can relate to how she feels about it, is just like, we're going to do this. You're going to feel great when you're done doing it, which she does every single time she does. And sometimes she is really happy to be doing it as well, but to keep the routine and to keep caring for herself, because mentally it helps her. It calms her mind down and allows her to sleep a bit better at nighttime and just focus on the other things in her life that she wants to be able to focus on. And that has nothing to do with preventing diabetes or looking skinny or, any of those things. It's just about her quality of life.
Yeah, it's just a helpful thing that makes you feel nice. And
Yeah.
I think people are motivated by all sorts of different things. Like human motivation is a very interesting, obviously, topic that I have to learn about. And I have been guilty of writing the odd post about how to help you live longer and how to prevent heart attacks and diabetes and things like that.
I
And
think
some
you should
people
do that.
some people are motivated by that, yes, but I mean, I do believe that there is some sort of movement that everyone can enjoy, and I think the problem that came about is that certain types of fitness or movement somehow got a higher ranking than others, and it was just like, okay, well, to have it actually count as a workout, or to actually count as something that's going towards helping you live longer, it has to be this terrible thing that you don't like. And people don't realize that there are so many other options of ways to move that still count and will contribute towards your overall well-being, but they're not taken as seriously, or people are very black and white. As a non-binary person, I hate that. And I think two truths can be held at once. And yes, I've had clients that have come to me and they're like, can you make me a program to strengthen my shoulder and neck muscles because I do bird watching for exercise? Which, great. I love that for you. And that is legitimate exercise. I would also encourage them. And I mean, they're doing it on their own. They're looking for cross training to help support that thing that they like. So I do think that a little bit of everything is better than just one I'm trying to, right now I live in a community with a lot of older people, as you know, and I'm trying to convince them that walking their 10,000 steps a day is good, but we have good, better, best. There is always levels, and you shouldn't be shamed into doing the more intense one, but let's find a way together to figure out how to make the more intense thing or the more beneficial thing something that you enjoy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think also a physical activity is a bit of a, like, it's a challenge, right? So
Hmm.
especially, as it's a challenge for everybody. It just depends on where you're entering the activity in terms of your own abilities and the difficulty level of the activity itself and other factors. But I think for some people, especially like the walkers that we are, that you just mentioned, that you can never take away the value of this great thing that they're doing, because it is great. Like, you do need to move just in a very basic form every single day. We can't just be completely sedentary. So that means that these folks are not sedentary. So, like, is there anything else that you might like to add into your day? Or are there any kind of things that you cannot access because your body is limiting you from being able to do so, that you might like to try and access? And I think the goal, the overall like vision of where I'm headed and what I want to be able to do, can be quite motivating for people, as long as they can remember why they started doing something. And I think that coaches and trainers and teachers were there to help you remember why you're doing what you decided to undertake. Like, that's a major part of, and then people get to where they're going in their own time. I'm okay with that. But sometimes the things that we say or that we show by example can inspire people as well to try something maybe a little outside of their comfort zone. So, what you were talking about, there's good, better, and best. Yoga is a practice that is shat on by fitness professionals everywhere for not being like, it's a stretch. It's not a real, it's not a real physical activity. And I mean, that's loaded in, many different ways. But what I'll say about it is this: I practice yoga, but I also do other things for my physical well being. And I think most yoga practitioners we're all like this. But then also, maybe lifters or athletes, like playing a specific sport or whatever, they will also use yoga for the physical benefit. Maybe they're not accessing from a spiritual perspective. Or Pilates has become very popular in terms of, like, we've gone from yoga to Pilates now. Maybe we'll go back to yoga. We've kind of done this back and forth for a long time, where we try and marry them together or whatever. That's all very fitness
Mm.
in terms of, how that is approached. So what I would say is to have balance in what you're doing, to keep your body and your brain balanced, is probably, a more realistic and healthy approach, especially for people who are really just undertaking movement, not for any like major goal, but just to maintenance their health and to keep their mind nice and clear. I I think it's really not cool for fitness folks or wellness folks to sort of sell whatever their niche happens to be as the ultimate and the only. We know that like diversity in anything makes life much better. So why wouldn't wellness and fitness be the same? I
100% agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's adorable that somebody reached out to you for bird watching. Very cute. There are teachable moments, I guess. Like, oh, that's really great. This is something you would like to target. That's not really how this type of work that I do works. And This is what I can offer you. This will target that and many other things because I'm more of a holistic approach and whatever way you want to
They did.
frame it.
I mean, I always ask. They're the one that's paying me, so I'm like, I suggest we do some lower body exercises too, and not just the upper body. And if someone was like, "Hey, man, I already do that enough. Like my legs get enough from the walking," I'll try and educate. And usually, I do like they do understand after I've educated them that you need to do resistance training a bit everywhere. But yeah, it is. It's good. It's nice to have the door opened for me to educate because if you just go and blah blah blah. Hey, did you know that this and this? People are less likely to listen than when they've given you the in to start explaining something to them, which I love. It's great.
Well, I think what we do too is it's majorly psychological for our clients too. So if you're, when you change your body, you do change your brain. The two come hand in hand. And I'm sure you can attest to clients who you've maybe been working with over a number of years how much their mind has changed just from the physical work that maybe you guys have undertaken together. A lot of times, I'm sure you've experienced this too, where clients will talk to you about all their personal stuff, and you're like, whoa, like I'm not a therapist. So then you find yourself being like, hey, have you ever thought about working with a therapist? Or you kind of like, segue into that, and you might be the thing in their life, the person in their life that planted the seed that this is a good idea. I don't think that health and wellness professionals, fitness professionals are only working on the body. We're not mechanics for cars. And so I think if you can recognize that, what your role actually is, and like a lot of students, a lot of clients, I think, look at you as being this all-knowing, almost like God
They
of
use you as a
health.
Google sometimes. I don't know if that happens to you, but yeah,
Yeah, and like that's a lot of power. So
yeah,
take it seriously and offer good advice and admit what you don't know when you don't know something too. I think there's a lot of people
that
doing
is key. Yeah, I
work like
think
what we do.
that's especially for movement, mainly movement practitioners like ourselves. A lot of clients ask me about nutrition things, and I'm sure people have asked you about nutrition things, and we're not dietitians, so you can give any advice or guidelines that you know factually are true, just that are general advice, but we shouldn't be telling people, oh, this is what I eat, you should just copy me, or oh, yeah, this is bad, or this is toxic. Like, that really annoys me when people overstep that boundary and or overstep their knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes I end up with clients who are very, they want to know if you have like other certifications attached to like the one thing that you're offering. And like I respect that. I feel like you're asking the right questions and you're feeling out, what I'm qualified to tell you about, to share with you, to teach you. And but I think a lot of clients also don't have the instinct or the knowledge to do that. And I like to tell them, there are other professionals who work with, let's say, diet or whatever. And I highly recommend that you work with somebody like that. Like that's a bit out of my scope of work. And I even shy away from telling them what I do because
Yeah.
I for some reason, sometimes there's just this sort of like what you're saying is very, very correct. And I'm going to follow that. I'm going to do what she's doing or what they're doing. And I don't want to harm anybody. I'm here to help. So I think it's really important to remember that. I've had over the years horrific experiences with fitness professionals. I'm fat. I've been fat most of my life. Um, all kinds of experiences. I feel like I could write a book about those alone. And some of the stuff that, because a lot of the time, most of the time in the fitness spaces, all of the people who are teaching or who are leading, they all live, the majority of them, and this is shifting now, of course, but I mean, we haven't won yet. Um, they all live in small bodies, and, there's a lot of disordered eating in the industry as well that, like, it goes very overlooked. Like, I don't want to learn how to lose weight from somebody is
In the
who
midst of
has
it
an
eating.
eating disorder that is untreated.
Hmm.
So, like, if you're in treatment and recovery and, all of those things, great. I'll learn about those things from you. But if you're not, I'm not going to do as you do. That would be a detriment to my health. You're just passing your sickness on to me, which is really unfortunate. And I wish I'd known that when I was younger, entering into those spaces, because I believe I was taught by a lot of unwell people who presented as well because they were in skinny bodies and steroids and a whole bunch of other things. And I had one trainer tell me when I was in my mid 20s, between children, that if I lost weight, I was going to have surgery. And but that's okay, because the plastic surgeons can fix anything. And then I later on in life realized, like, this woman was in the bodybuilding profession. She was on performance enhancing drugs. She definitely had an eating disorder. And she's coaching me on diet and physical activity, and was not qualified to do diet for sure. And there were other
I
experiences that I
think
had. So I got, yeah.
this is a common experience I think that a lot of people have had, and it's still slowly it the thing about the first personal trainers, when personal training is starting to get popular, is because bodybuilding, the golden age of bodybuilding in the 70s and 80s, and then personal trainers started to become a thing that people had in the 80s and 90s. It was still sort of for celebrities or well-off people, that it was still quite unaffordable to most, and then there became more and more personal trainers. But it started as a lot of bodybuilders coaching regular people, and not every person wants to become a bodybuilder, but a lot of these coaches will just coach everyone as if they want to be a bodybuilder. And that is a ticket towards an eating disorder and disappointment or stress, and someone to just throw in the towel, because it's quite an extreme way of living your life. And I find that that is a massive issue even now. When I've seen the rise of all these queer and trans people becoming trainers as well. I follow a lot of trans masculine people who are trainers, who are into bodybuilding, and they want to do competitions, or they want to do photo shoots, and they are bodybuilders, and they do not have personal training certifications, but for some reason they're handing out programs and people asking them for advice, because people think that, oh, that guy's just on T and he works out, I can look like that too. But they don't realize that to live a bodybuilding lifestyle is quite not quite what a lot of people actually want to do, but they just think it's weird. They just see a person that looks like a bodybuilder, like, yes, personal trainer, I want that one, but you don't actually want that one. And so that's something that frustrates me a lot. But I understand that the experience that you've had, a lot of my cis clients have had as well, with having a trainer that was in that realm, that community of bodybuilding, and they've had a more sort of extreme coaching style.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, the dieting that comes along with, um, I think it's really hard to talk about wellness spaces, fitness spaces, without talking about diet and disordered eating. It seems like a very avoided topic. So thanks for talking about it today. Um, it's very sad. I mean, eating disorders are a form of mental illness. And, um, like, if everyone had depression in the room, we would think about it very differently than an eating disorder. And, my partner is a big fitness person, and the way that we approach health and wellness is so different. But one thing that we do unite on is diet, being very personal and towards what you specifically want, what you're doing, what you're capable of, what you can afford. Like, there's so many layers to that. And I think health and wellness professionals who are not certified, trained in food, in diet, should just find their place. And when it carries over into building a body, so bodybuilding is like I just view it as building a body, like build a bear. I People who do it as a profession, if they can do it without walking out the other side with a mental illness, I applaud them. I'd be very curious on what the numbers about that have to say, though. Like if everyone was assessed, I just, I just don't know if you can force your body to do things that are beyond its limits without there being consequences, that are not so desirable as well. You're building a body, you've got to look, but that's why I view like that holistic wellness package. Those are two different lanes. And holistic is where I would, like to be recognized for in my work anyway.
I
I'm
think
not.
that's sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that our even in the yoga world, building a yoga body. I mean, I can't say it's a space that I come from is perfect either. I had, when I was doing my teacher training, one of my instructors fat shamed me in front of my entire class. And one person who didn't want to work with me because we had to put our hands on each other's bodies and like mark where certain bones were in our anatomy class. And it was all consensual and whatever, and I was fine. And she like outright complained to our instructor in front of everybody about having to mark where my hip bones were coming out of it because I was too fat. She couldn't feel them. And I'm like, but I can feel them. And my teacher came along and she was like, I can feel them. But she was just afraid to touch my body because I was fat and she wasn't. So I think that like in those spaces of health and wellness, we need to be like really conscious of the biases and how we treat people because we want people to come back. How can you tell, for example, a fat person you're fat and worthless, you need to lose weight, and then when they enter the space where they might be trying to target that very specific issue, you then other them and basically tell them they don't belong here. It's like, well, where do they belong then?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that really does annoy me when you see the most people that are openly spouting fat phobia in comments online don't want fat people in a gym, but they don't want fat people to exist full stop. So it's like, well, wait, what do you want? And I think it is just that, yeah, internalized fat phobia that they have of not wanting it to happen to themselves, or maybe they themselves were bullied when they were younger and they've turned into the bully themselves, which is a really sad thing to see. But speaking of, I guess, wellness, being a wellness coach, I want to be holistic like that. And I think what we were just talking about earlier, to be holistic and not have a dietitian's degree or a kinesiology degree or a physiotherapy degree, you can still be holistic in the way that we consider all these things that you were mentioning, like whether all the demographics about the person, whether they're neurodivergent, whether they're disabled, whether they're fat, whether they're an immigrant, whether they're from X or Y culture, all of these little things that we can consider in their goals that they've set with us. And if we don't, if we know that they need specific help, like a talk therapist or a dietitian or whatever, then we refer out. I think you can still be a holistic wellness practitioner. And the good way of doing it is you do refer out if you don't know something, because you can't be someone's guru, like you're saying, like a god or something. I'm not, I don't have a supercomputer brain right now, at least when they start putting chips in us, I might. But yeah, to be a holistic coach, I think that is one of the important things, is to know your limits, refer out, but also you're considering somebody as a whole person when they walk into your door. And I want to know some more bad experiences that you've had in the past with a coach or a class instructor or whatever, and how you've learned from those experiences and transformed the experience for yourself to put a better experience onto your participants, let's say.
Sure. I mean, there's so many of them, but I've always, even since being, a health practitioner, like wellness practitioner, I've always stayed working with other professionals for my own personal growth. And I see the value in it. And I've never really benefited greatly from group settings from the perspective that I wanted to in terms of my physical wellness. I have a lot of injuries. So I've had 3 surgeries, and they've definitely left their mark on my movement patterns and whatever. So when I do group fitness, sometimes it's hard for me to keep up or whatever. So I like privates. Now, privates are accessible to those who can afford them. So you, with that considered, in group settings, because I love group yoga, and then I can do more of it because it's cheaper. But I think that for a lot of people who live in a body like mine, in terms of like a fat body that needs rehab, a lot of fitness folks don't really want to work with us unless it's one-on-one because they don't feel safe. But a lot of people in my position, let's say, maybe wouldn't necessarily even be able to access without a group setting because that shares the cost of the setting. So I think what I learned, even for myself, with the amount of rehab that I've needed over the years, I figure out what my budget is, and I've been able to do both together. But even as a provider, I have one student who is definitely financially challenged, and but she comes to my classes every week. She doesn't miss a beat. She's really dedicated, and because my classes are accessible in terms of price, and that seems to work for her. My class sizes are pretty small, and so she does get some aspect of, private attention through that process. So for me, if I was out in the world looking again for places and spaces to practice any movement in, I would look for spaces that are smaller. I would look for spaces that have instructors that are similar to me in terms of like the intersections that I inhabit myself. I would look for, I would look at price as well, and not from the perspective of like affordability is check, check. We all need to do that. We can't do anything that's out of our affordability range. But from the perspective of like, there's nothing that I dislike more than sort of like a boutique wellness situation where like the cost of something, the price of it is just it's unattainable for most people because the demographic of people that professional is trying to attract to their practice is they're the only ones that can afford it. And I don't really want to be in those spaces personally. The reason for it is you're getting a lot of, like you're getting a really fancy bathroom, and, like there's some stuff that really, just because the shower's nice doesn't mean that your approach to my wellness is going to be any better than somebody who's teaching in a more modest space.
100%.
So those are all things that I would consider. I used to hate this online way of accessing wellness services. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, I hate this. And it's probably because we were all just traumatized into being forced to do it. But over time, what online has done is it's given me access to a wider variety of practitioners who are more suited to my specific needs. I'm oftentimes supporting people who deserve it. I don't know a better way to put it than that, but like they're professional, they're qualified, they're really good at what they do, and but they live in the South America. I don't know, like I think it's okay to access whatever you can from wherever you can through this video type practice. So what happened to me specifically, even just with you accessing your services, you moved from Montreal, so I couldn't see you in person anymore. And so I tried to work with some other trainers and it just didn't work for me. And I was trying to find something that would also work for my daughter because I wanted to train with her too. And like, she's very, very neurodivergent, and a lot of her traits and characteristics are like very confusing for atypical people. And so they don't treat her right. And we're not working out to be mistreated or misunderstood. Like that's, so the greatest thing that I learned about finding the person you want to work with, I think is so over the years, I haven't worked with people who were always very understanding of some of my experiences. And I think that's like a big reason why people just don't go back. I was stubborn. I kept going back. I was convinced there was space for me somewhere, but I really didn't find it until recently, if I'm being honest. And so part of like becoming a yoga teacher was about just improving my own practice to begin with. I didn't know if I was ever even going to bother to teach, but then I had to do my teaching hours and I was like, oh yeah, I actually really like this. This is kind of fun. Um, and then I kind of just stuck to the lane of what I cared about in terms of teaching, because there's lots of different things you can do. And after experiencing people who were not very empathetic towards me and did more harm than good, I knew what to do. I knew what to offer. So I don't think that you should tolerate a fitness professional that makes you feel bad about yourself. I don't think that you should tolerate one that is acting like a god in your life, like they know everything, they know best. I don't think that, and I think that you can move on at any time. You shouldn't feel guilty about that, because I definitely have had circumstances where I felt guilty about terminating a contract with somebody that I had hired to work with me. And, because you also build a relationship with them over time because you see them a lot. And so sometimes it's hard to leave, but those relationships can be toxic too if you're not getting out of it what you wanted to get out of it. And it's your wellness. So
And
find the
maybe
right.
the other person wants to break up too, and they don't want to hurt your feelings, and so
Yeah.
they're just waiting
Yeah.
for you to say something. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, don't stay in any
I feel like
relationship.
I feel like also in some of my circumstances, I'm very chatty and very open, especially if I spend a lot of time with you all. I'll tell you my story. I'm relatable to many folks in some ways. And I just think that sometimes I would find myself where the professional boundary would sort of slowly erode. I'll give you a compliment right now. What I really enjoy about you is that when we are working, we're working, and then we can discuss other things outside of that. And I appreciate that. I get sidetracked just because I am who I am. So it's good that my trainer is, well, we have a 90-second break and that's all we're taking. And like to have, because that, like, that's the work, right?
Yeah,
That's your work. So things like that, I guess that's my recommendation for
right.
anyone
That's a
looking
good
for something
green
to work
flag.
with.
I have heard of a story once of a guy that hired a personal trainer, and they were this is in Europe somewhere, a friend of a friend, and a wealthy guy hired the trainer. They had a relationship for a couple of years. And one day, the wealthy guy just convinced the trainer to sit on the couch with him and drink Coca-Cola and watch the football. True story. But yes, I think if you're paying someone to help you do a thing, make sure that they've got the ovaries to actually tell you, "Hey, I'm here to work out. Let's switch footy after, and you can pay me another 100 or whatever." It's important.
Yeah, well, I feel like being that person's friend and you have a true friendship, then
Yeah,
you can manage that outside of your work. I think
yeah.
one of the interesting things that has been brought up to me a lot lately is my tattoo artist, in the space that she works out of. The other tattoo artists were bringing up doing work for friends. So people they were friends with first, and then sort of like the expectations that friends maybe have around price, around favors and those kinds of things. They're like, but this is my job. Like, if I'm doing everything for my friends for free, then I'm hungry. And my answer to that was like, well, your friends should be supporting you not just by taking your services for free. I'm not sure if that's real friendship. And but then kind of asked around with some other, because it really stuck in my mind. I'm like, are you guys experiencing this? They're like, oh yeah, family members too just want to get it for free because they know me, they think they got a hookup, and they don't even think about the fact that like this is how I feed myself. I do this full time for myself. I have no other income and this is my profession. And maybe you might choose to give a family member or a friend a discount, but I feel like the expectation of it is a little bit shocking too.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've been thinking about that a little bit lately.
Very lucky that my friends and family are always offering to pay for a program, which is very nice to hear. And sometimes I had to teach myself to just take the money because they were offering. I wanted to then gift it. I was like, thank you for being nice to me. I'll be nice to you. But I think what we should be expecting of our friends, what I expect of my friends, are to support your business for even for free. I'm like, I have one friend that she will save and like and comment on like every post that I make on TikTok. And my mum will just go and binge like and save and comment and things like that. And I'm like, yes, this is a free thing that you can do to support your friend that helps them, with the algorithm gods and things like that. But yes,
Well,
pay your friends.
well, I would rather pay you than pay some big gym chain, and like, where's that even going?
Mm.
I like having access to tailor-made services. And
Hmm.
if I'm not willing to pay for them, they're going to go away because then
Yeah,
there's no need for them.
yeah,
So, I mean, that makes logical sense to me. And when I was thinking about this last night, I'm like, I want to bring this up in this podcast
yeah.
because I feel like all the masses should be aware. Like, when you draw upon a service that's very tailor made to you, like, yeah, it might cost you some money, but you're not just paying for the service too. You're paying for that person to exist in the way that they are existing in your world. We would have to find professions in different lanes if there's no way to feed yourself doing this. And I think that's important for everyone to understand.
Appreciate you bringing this up. And I think I'm probably going to record just another vlog. It's solely about this topic later. But I think I'm one of the only trainers left. I feel like I'm a rare species that actually does make someone's program from scratch and from what the things that they're telling me are, because so many people now are using the apps that you can pay for to rebrand as your own, and they just create a program that's just a cookie cutter program that you put in a few rough goals or measurements or whatever, but doesn't it's none of these apps take into consideration like your specific goals. I couldn't put into an app like I want to do a lot of rotational work, or if someone has a limb difference and they can't clasp something with one hand, no app is going to be like, okay, well, if you can't hold a dumbbell here, we're going to use cables on this arm and a dumbbell on this arm. Like an app, I mean, maybe one day, but not right now. It can't do that. And so I feel like I seen by you by saying that, and you're willing to pay for a custom thing. And sometimes people think that they're buying something custom, but it's not. It's so frustrating to me that people can use all these different marketing words and not have any repercussions for the fact that they're fake or not completely true, or they're too vague of a words. I've had clients that have seen me and then I'm expensive and they can't afford me, so they will go to someone on Instagram that's selling them a program for X, Y, and Z, losing weight, building a bigger bum, whatever. And then they'll come back to me and say, "Oh, I started the program and I stopped it after 2 weeks because I messaged the coach saying I had an injury or I pulled a muscle. Can you adjust the program for me?" And the coach is like, "Oh, just push through it. Like, just you'll be fine, right?" Because these coaches aren't making the program. They freak out when the app has developed something and then the client says, "I can't do this because of a reason," and they don't know how to work around it because they're not doing anything. So please stop buying programs off of people on Instagram who are making you download random apps and PDFs.
I think that, like, well, I mean, AI is a whole separate 10 other podcasts, but I think that you can use an app, you can whatever, but then it's not personalized. So why are you paying? Just download the app. take care of it yourself, the app will be cheaper than paying somebody else to input your data, which is probably just a 5-minute questionnaire. You can just do that. You just do
Yeah.
that yourself, which is fine if that's what you
Yeah.
want to do. But if you're looking for that one-on-one experience of like, this person is taking into account my very specific issues, my specific body, my personality, my tolerances, my likes, my dislikes, all of that, like, you know, then pay for it. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I think for affordability purposes, maybe you might have a friend that also wants to do the same thing, so you can team up and like reduce your cost a bit. Like most people who do what we do will offer cheaper options, and you can see if those options are something that you want to work with as well. And what's nice about dealing with another human being is that, you can discuss what is possible and what's not possible, and you can both arrive at something that works for you, or you can choose to part ways. But I think that we undertake health and wellness because we want to become more resilient and confident and autonomous. As you move through the journey, you do become that. I think you even become more of that in your personality too, in terms of, my trainer's not offering me what I want anymore, and so I'm not going to work with them anymore, and I'm moving on to someone else. And every time that I have left like a trainer or any type of wellness practitioner to move on to someone else, it's never felt wrong. It's never felt like I didn't deserve to be able to do that. It's always like, well, this isn't meeting my needs anymore, and it's time to go on to the next level. It's just the next level, and that's okay. Um, and sometimes, I've worked with one fitness professional for about 3 years, and I watched her change her practice a number of times, like, because she was growing and changing too. And in the end, I actually chose to leave her because she was incredibly transphobic. Like, what she was offering was not that bad, but because I was a part of this queer community, she would share all of her opinions with me while I was working out, and then I would leave there and I would be upset. I like, it was like traumatic to speak to her. So that just had to end. And it felt great because then I was working out in spaces where I just didn't have to listen to that crap. And it felt lighter, better. And then I found you. And that was sort of how I progressed along. But I think if you're unhappy with the wellness situation you have going on, you got to leave it and find something that works for you.
Totally agree. And I am, as a person that makes their living off of people coming to see me and paying me money to spend an hour with me, I am happy when my clients need to move on or feel like they are ready for something new. Like, for example, when I moved from Montreal, I tried to suggest other trainers that my clients could see in person if that's what they really wanted. I offered online if that's what they wanted or thought that they could enjoy as a transition. And also, some of them were finally brave enough to just get a membership to the gym and go on their own or find a gym buddy in their neighborhood to go with. That was the happiest time for me because my purpose is not to just have someone rely on me for the rest of their life. When I've given someone the confidence to go out and do fitness on their own and know what they're doing, then that's really exciting for me. I think they feel bad when they're breaking up with me, but I'm like, oh, my baby is leaving for college. Like, it's actually a cute moment. Okay, I'm going to give you some rapid fire questions, which they can be longer if you think it's necessary, but just a little quick one's good. And then I will do a couple last questions and wrap it up. So, what is a wellness practice that's helped you personally the most?
The most meditation.
That. Okay, but follow-up question. I'm breaking the rapid fire rule. Meditation's different from everyone. Do you mean like classic sitting down, closing your eyes?
Just all forms of breath work.
Okay, good. Something that you wish more coaches understood about trauma.
That they can trigger it or soothe it. It's their choice.
Ooh, I love that. A small step someone could take this week to reconnect with their body.
Move it.
Love that. Ooh, this one, I love it. I don't, if it's hard, if you have to think about it for a second. But one belief about healing that you've changed your mind about, or a belief, yeah.
That it happens at the rate it's going to happen. You can't speed up the process. You can't write a list of goals and create a plan and a timeline and expect that you will be correct. Not
You're
a
just along for
destination.
the ride. Love that. What are you most excited about in your work right now, or where your teaching career is going?
What am I most excited about?
Hmm.
I just want to meet more people who are trying to do the same thing I'm trying to do.
Love that. And if this is a big one, but it's a good reflective one for if you were thinking about something earlier, we're coming onto the show. If listeners or viewers on YouTube can take one message away from this conversation, what do you hope that it is? Or your top three?
You get to decide the path you want to take for your own health and wellness. Stay away from fake gurus and enjoy what you've chosen to do for yourself. You deserve it. It's actually a treat. It's not torture.
That sentiment. And so, where can people find out more or learn about your classes?
The studio I teach in is called Espace Bien-être. It's in NDG in Montreal. So the class schedule is just posted on the website. You can find me on there. And I have an Instagram account just for my business stuff. It's called ML Live Well.
Live well. And you have online classes as well?
Not currently, no.
Not yet. Okay, great. But people should still follow you if because one
Yeah,
day.
well, if there's a need for online classes, I will teach them. So
That's amazing. Cool. Thank you so much for joining me and whoever is watching. And I really appreciate always. I know that we can talk for like 3 hours, so maybe I'll have you back another time. So thank you, Michelle. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Resilient Fitness Revolution. These conversations are all about exploring the space between recovery and performance and helping people understand that healing, strength, and resilience don't follow a straight line. If you're someone navigating injury, surgery, or a big transition in your relationship with movement, just know you're not alone. The rehab gap is real, and more people are starting to talk about it. If you'd like to learn more about my work, bridging that gap through coaching, education, and consulting, you can visit dibsfitness.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, sharing it with a friend or leaving a quick rating or review is one of the best ways to help more people find these conversations. Thank you for being here. Until next time, keep moving in ways that help you feel strong, capable, and at home in your body. Bye.